My name is Cool Cat. Nanny Sharon asked me to share. She is telling Freddy the Parrot's rescue story. Squawk. That's Freddy. Squawk.
Hi, Nanny Sharon here. Just wanted to tune in for part 2 of Pork Chop and Freddy's origins and how I rescued. We'll go into a little bit more of that today. You're so silly. So, what do you want to be in the picture? Oh, so now you're in the picture. Look right there. Look in the camera right there. You see right there? Okay. Anyhow, so I came upon Pork Chop, as I spoke about, in a rescue in New York, upstate. And I didn't really elaborate how really interesting he was. Over time, he's such a doll. He's turned out to be such a great bird. Okay, so when you take a bird into your home, it's not like taking a cat or a dog. You have to wait for a little time for them to acclimate to you. I would say it had to be 20 days. I would open the cage. I would allow him to come out if he chose to, and he didn't choose to. But eventually, when he did come out, I learned right away, right out of the gate, that they did put some really quality time into training him. So he knew a whole bunch of words. He knew carrot. He knew I was a good and a bad bird. He knew pretty bird. He knew, he knows good bird because he actually says to me sometimes, good bird. His vocabulary started to grow. I mean, over time, they'll start to speak. So that's what's interesting about birds that are rescues. If you think you're going to come to them and start saying things like Polly want a cracker or peekaboo or, just start whistling things and they can mimic it immediately back, that's not how it works out. So over time, Pork Chop, my African gray, started to unfold and become a really great bird. And the best thing of all was that whoever had him, they didn't do anything mean. They just, they did hand train him. So he was trained right from the start to get on your hand, climb up your shoulder, sit on your lap, so he was fully trained. So that was really excellent. So then I had Pork Chop, I had Birdie, and Lucy, 2 cockatiels. So there was just the 3 of us. And then one day, out of the blue, a friend of mine that is a close friend, what did she do? She IM'd me on the Facebook and said, Sharon, my brother lives in Montauk, Long Island. And I know it's a little far, but he's downsizing his house so his daughter can move in. And there's a bird room he has, and he's giving away his birds. And I said, really? She goes, yeah. She says, he has this yellow-naped Amazon, and he's looking to find it a home. And I said, well, how much do you think he wants? She says, he doesn't want any money. He just wants to make sure they have a good home, and I know you'll be the best. And that was very flat, right? So at the time, I didn't trust the old Honda Element I had. So to be honest with you, I rented a car and I took the cruise all the way to Montauk, Long Island. It was four or more hours. Almost, it's the tip almost where the Long Island Sound is. It's pretty far. And I'm not a good traffic person, so I didn't drive well in the traffic, but I got there. And so the story for Fred goes, it was a nice gentleman and he was really nice. Again, not all the rescues come from a situation that isn't good. Fred came from a situation where I went into the house, nice little 2-level house. He was on a 2nd floor. I walked up the 2nd floor and he was in a room all by himself. And he had a view of the ground floor and the street. And it looks like he never opened the windows, so he never had fresh air. Never opened the windows. But it does look like he had a bunch of other birds and he was a little sad. I could just tell he was sad. And I said, well, tell me everything you can about him. And he goes, well, I think he's like, I think he's like 50. I think he's like 50, 55. He goes, where I got him was an elderly gentleman that was 93 years old, passed away, and he had him his entire life. So Fred had already been rehomed. Fred had a home with a little old man that had him till the day he died. And then my friend, she called me and said, Sharon, go to Long Island, see if it's a good fit for you. So I go to Long Island, I see him, we're just chatting. And I go, well, so tell me a little bit more. I mean, so he hops on his shoulder, sitting on his shoulder, and you could see they were bonded real close. They were close. And I said, well, I see no reason why I couldn't take him. He's friendly with you. I don't expect him to do that with me right away. It would take a time. I said, I'm willing to work with him. So he starts to take apart the gentleman, Bob, starts taking apart the cage, and he sits on his shoulder. Fred sits on his shoulder the whole time as he's taking it apart, and he's looking at him. We're taking apart, we're bringing down the cage, we're putting it into the car, taking it into the car, and then I had a little carrier, and I put him in the carrier, and then I took him home. And to be honest with you, this was probably a really good thing for Fred. I guess nobody wanted to take him, but I don't think Bob knew that he was sort of sad, because now he's inseparable from Pork Chop. I can't separate them. I can't even take Pork Chop in another room without Fred losing it and start screaming. Whereas, and start yelling, Ma, or he calls for me now. He calls me Ma, 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 Ma. So if I leave the room, he'll say, Ma, he wants me back in that room. So it's really funny. Fred's vocabulary isn't very big, but so we got him in the car. We drove the 5 hours. I set up his whole cage. I'm usually not very good without any instructions, and I put together this huge cage, put him in it. But there was 3 other birds in the room, so he thought, wow, I'm not alone, and I think for Fred, he had given away all his friends. Bob had given away all his friends, so he had no one. I don't know how long he was in that room alone before he found me, but I'm sure he missed the other birds. So, because birds are flock animals, they really need to have other birds in the house. Fred did kind of start to talk, I would say, within the first 3 days, but not the first night, not like Pork Chop. Pork Chop spoke the very first night, calling himself a bad, bad bird. And that's when I, updated him and said, you're not a bad, bad bird. You're a pretty bird and a smart bird, and you're going to be so spoiled with toys. And so Fred came with a ton of toys, a beautiful cage, a beautiful setup, and a bunch of food. So they gave me everything I needed. So the gentleman that had Fred before Bob, he lived to, like I said, very old. And when he passed away, he was a single owned, he had been owned by one person. And that's what everybody should know, is that parrots can outlive you. So you have to put together a plan, of what to do with them if you should pass. Or you should get injured or something should happen. I mean, anything can happen. So I do have a plan together for my birds. Anyhow, so the first few weeks I just fed him. He ate, didn't miss a beat. He ate every day. I did not let him out right away. I waited a little while because I didn't know if I could get him back in. So Pork Chop was out. The other cockatiels would be out about on my shoulder or walking around with them or something. But I waited a little while because he has to decompress and realize he's someplace new. And he had to get used to me. And again, they're not like cats and dogs. You don't just push yourselves on them. You got to wait. It's kind of like wait for them to come to you. So he eventually did. He let me rub his head on his little yellow spot. And then he held his fingers up. He is hand trained, so he will let you get on him. And I do the nail clipping. I do the wing clippings. And I do all that, with help, of course. Somebody holds a towel and I do it all. But I can do the nail clipping and the wing clipping. So eventually I had to do that with him. But over time, he really blended in with our flock. So Pork Chop now is in love with Fred. And Fred likes Pork Chop. they can't be in the same cage together because they're males. They're both boys. They have to be in separate cages. But they like to know. Sometimes I'll see them sitting next to each other in the on their cages because they each have their own separate one. So one will be sitting one will be sitting in the other. But then they'll just kind of gravitate a little bit and just look at each other at the side eye. But it's a flock thing, and I'm part of the flock. So everything really worked out. So you don't need to buy a bird, a parrot, when there's so many rescue stories and there's so many good ones. There are good stories. So Pork Chop's story was very good. He was 5 years alone. I mean, I know they came out and they cleaned him every day and they made sure everything, but he didn't have a lot of toys. She wanted it to be super, super neat and clean, and he didn't. So now Fred have tons of toys, all kinds of goodies, and when I make things, I cook for them. They eat fresh fruit. I make banana bread. I make cornbread. They like cornbread too. And so Fred now is he was about 50 now. That's over another 10 or something years. So he's in his 60s now. I do hear the yellow-naped Amazon kids live as old as 70. So he's 62. So he's really old. He's old. And Pork Chop is only about 20. So he's the teenager in the group, but he's very happy. The two of them are very happy. So again, I talked about that little camera that I have. It's a blink camera. I highly recommend that for your pets, not just for the birds, but I can watch them. I can talk to them through it. And it's not about, it's sort of about keeping a hold of the door too, watching who's coming out of my home, which is always good to know. And if you're renting, because people can, come in and out when you're renting, not when you own your house. But anyhow, so success stories do happen, and it happened with Fred and Pork Chop. They both became friends. They bonded over time. They can't touch each other. They don't want to love on each other because they're males. They don't do that. But they're happy. They get their regular baths and their meals, and they've been to the vet. The vet sees them, occasionally, but mostly birds, as long as you keep them healthy, they don't really need to see the vet. Anyhow, that's my story about Fred, and Fred is my yellow-naped Amazon, and he's been with me around possibly 10 years or so, a little bit more, probably now. The last 2 years since I've been down here, probably 12 now. So I got Fred and Pork Chop not far from each other when I did get the two birds at the same. It was in the same 6 months. So anyhow, that's the story, and I hope you like it. If you do get birds, it's a wonderful thing. It's a lot less as far as physical activity than the cats and the dogs. You feed them in the morning, and you have to have them out. I like to keep them out an hour or more each day, sometimes 4 hours, 5 hours. It depends. If they're really good, I'll let them hang out. I did get them a special tree so they can hang out on it. It's a very cool tree. It's a cactus tree from Arizona, and it was an old bookcase, but I turned it into a perch. Anyhow, that's my story, and I hope you like it. And that's the story of Pork Chop and Freddy. Bye.